Okay, in our last video, so this is the part 2 of Snow White trailer review, and so we left off in the part where, so we're going into the part where the dwarves they tell Snow White that she will be safe from the queen. So the house is and the forest itself is a refuge for her, and this is a common storytelling element used, and they use this with Bride of Rose, with Sleeping Beauty, the idea of escaping to right, even like Lion King, right, with Hakuna Matata, sometimes the idea of the hero having to escape and having to form, really in some cases, it's almost like you need that space, right? Because in this case, the huntsman actually created this, and then the dwarves, happen to they protect her and become a representative of, and this is a case where her charm, right, Snow White's charm, is able to create these, make these things happen. So without her, personality and her heart, I guess it's what, and that's what wins people over. But it's not enough to just say things or just do things or say things. I mean, it's about doing it. It's about living it. And by helping the dwarves and by cleaning the house, she becomes that. She is that person, essentially. This is something. The role of Snow White. Snow White has been preparing for this moment all her life with all her past actions. Now, at this part of the trailer, they also say, this is where Snow White is telling the dwarves that the evil queen has taken everything from her. So in our last video, we talked about how oftentimes your parents can sometimes, they might give their inheritance to someone else, right? Or, as a child, your parents, and this is a form of tragedy where, your parents think that for the better, something's for the better, but it ends up not being for the better. And this, it's twofold, because it shows how, fathers can sometimes misjudge how to best help their offspring. But also, some of it is out of their control. But I mean, the reality is you can't expect someone to take care of your offspring the same way that a parent would. Now, in this case, Snow White, at least in this movie, or at least in this trailer, she shows, the one thing that's good is that she shows an understanding of what's happened to her. And that's an essential part of being a hero, because, a lot of times you can't know if something happened to you if you don't understand what's happening to you. And this is a sign of intelligence, actually, because a lot of humans, they don't take the time to accurately understand why they are where they are, why things happen the way they did. And a lot of it, if you notice, Snow White could be overtaken by this, right? Like she could, and I kind of wish that this scene wasn't in a movie. Like I understand movies have to kind of explain what's happening, and this is a problem with Hollywood, having to explain. We wouldn't have to, we could just tell what's going on if we could just watch her actions, because her actions are reflective of what she knows, what she understands. And so you shouldn't have to say it so bluntly. But, the reality is being able to understand what happened to you is kind of what causes the story to unfold to begin with. Because if Snow White didn't understand what was happening, she would just live her life the same, or she would just do random things. And so this intentionality is a part of her character, and it creates, it's a powerful part of your character, because I don't believe that most humans, I don't think that most humans live this way, to be honest. They don't see their life as a story in the same way. And a lot of times people will kind of just meander and live life randomly, kind of just choosing what, fits them, what's most comfortable at the moment. But there's only, that will only take you as far as what could ever possibly happen, through sheer randomness. But to be able to create a future for yourself that is more focused and targeted, and also, being able to analyze the situation and your place in it, that creates a different type of future for yourself. And in this case, and the reason I say this is because it kind of talks about how, it makes me think about how in life we have ideas, and if we have ideas about the future, and if we understand where we want to go and why things are happening, we can create sort of a machine, if you want to put it this way, not an ideological, but a machine made of our own ideas, and this will allow us to shape the future into something that's more exacting for us. Now, in this case, a lot of times, I wish this movie was a little more subtle about this, because there are many ways to achieve your goals, and it doesn't necessarily have to be sort of combative. It doesn't have to be one-to-one like that. What I mean is that the future can be shaped by your ideas, and I'm characterizing it as a machine, by this machine that comes from that is made up of different ideas that you put together through thinking about things for a long period of time. And when you come up, ideas have the power to connect and to make it so that your future actions and your plan, so to speak, becomes much more tailor-made than it would be if you hadn't made any plans at all. And especially if you understand your place and you're able to analyze, the better you're able to analyze what's happening and understand sort of cause and effect, and maybe what's happened before, and what could happen, what the possibilities are for the future, or being able to see what the future could be. That's what makes that's what makes the difference. And this is something that I think a characterization that Snow White has had, her ability to understand what happened to her. And this is something Cinderella, to some extent, has this as well. But really, I guess what I'm saying is, I don't think I don't think it's just a matter of a kind person just being kind forever. There's an intentionality to what they're doing, and I believe that in some sense there's a level of sacrifice and also a level of being able to know what they want in life and having a purpose in life. And I see that in the movie, and I see that in this trailer as well. When she, but of course they spell it out here with her saying, the queen has taken all that we have, so now we know she's going to go after her, or she's going to go after what needs to be done. Now, normally in a story you wouldn't want to say it like that, but because this is the norm nowadays, saying things so blatantly is essentially what has become, it's basically what they're telling us instead of showing us. But the outcome is the same, I guess, which is what I'm talking about, the intentionality. And a lot of times, the one thing that I kind of wish this movie had was that we see sort of this battle sequence that's about to happen, that's about to brew up, and I kind of wish that a lot of it, perhaps it's just a symbolism, but really in life, your personality and how you choose to engage with the world is a reflection of what I'm talking about, because those are the tools that are going to allow you to shape the future. So this is why in the original movie, and I don't know if this is the case here, but Snow White, her kindness and her heart, I guess, is what that's what pushes her forward. That's what her heart is what she uses because she believes in it. The idea of intentionality is that you believe in what you do, which is why you do it, and you don't just do it automatically. And the reason I say that is because of her ability to think in the future for a certain goal. And so obviously, if she didn't think that what she did would affect that, then she wouldn't do it. I would feel she wouldn't act out in kindness. She wouldn't. But I mean that's just my view on it, of course. Now some people might take the other, the other point of view and say, well, she would have just been kind anyway. But I think, I think that the difference is that, like I said, the ability to understand. And this is beyond the movie, though. This is the issue. Like, it's beyond the movie because it doesn't really tell us what's going on in her head, right? This is one of the reasons why books are typically better than movies. A lot of these movies, they oversimplify things a little too much, and perhaps I could be sort of reading a little too much into this. Maybe that could be the case. And if that's the case, well, I guess those are just the inspirations I'm getting from this trailer. But nevertheless, I'm just trying to express how a story could be and how this trailer, I guess, is kind of inspiring me, right? And the idea is, I do like how the story of Snow White tells the story of intentionality, and the issue is, a lot of people, especially nowadays, where people believe that, there's this idea that we don't really have control of our lives, that we just kind of live our lives, almost like automatons or like animals, kind of. And I think the reason why the animals and the dwarves admire Snow White so much is because she's different, is because she's at least has the power and ability to do something that they cannot. And so there is that symbolism, there is that contrast between the human mind and the power of the human mind versus, I guess you should say, animals that have not evolved in such a way to think about things in more thoughtful ways, and to be able to realize that the power of altruism and the power of, now of course with these battle scenes, it kind of ruins that theory, but like I said, it could just be symbolic in this sense. And it seems to me like a lot of these movies, they want to take these, I don't know, they kind of want to make them all like Lord of the Rings. If you've noticed, like the Maleficent movie, which is supposed to be like Sleeping Beauty, the live action version of Sleeping Beauty, or the Disney live action movie, or a lot of these movies, even if it's like Moana or something, these action sequences have become symbolic it's become sort of the soup du jour, the thing that every movie nowadays has are these action sequences. And, I wish the filmmakers would realize that action sequences are not always necessary. Certainly not in a movie like this, not this huge battle, which is so easy to do now with CGI. These used to be very expensive to do. And so it made sense that they wouldn't do it. But now that it's so easy to make these battle scenes, we see them almost every time. And I guess it's meant to appeal to us. But really, I actually think, it's like watching a chess match. There is more power in seeing the subtle and the slow and the interplays between people. And we see this in our lives, right? Oftentimes, we can define how we choose. You have a lot of power and influence, believe it or not, over how others can engage with you. If you choose to be more combative, then other people respond likewise. But if oftentimes, you have quite a bit of power. You're able to influence others according to what you do. And I don't know why this is, but people respond to your, to what you do. So it's not just, now of course on a macro level, perhaps you could argue that, as an individual you don't matter. And perhaps, on a large scale, no one's gonna notice. And that is true. And what I mean by that is, in a big scale, like when you are on a car, driving on a freeway, you're just a person among many. You're literally just a machine. It's almost like you don't exist in the universe for a few minutes, or for however long you're in a car. As weird as it is, because you're separated from the universe. Everyone is kind of in their own pod, and everyone is in just these nondescript cars, and you can't tell personality or anything with cars, not in a literal sense. And so it's almost like we pause time. But so that's what I mean by at a macro level. It's not, you lose your identity, so to speak, when you kind of pull out and you're in an environment where you cannot really express yourself or whatever. But in a lot of the smaller plays, and perhaps in a movie like this as well, I would have loved to have seen more of the psychological and more subtle ways of showing sort of the same thing, actually, the same drama, the same, and then you can see this with theater, let's say, right, or with performances, like through words, you have the ability. And so it would have been nice to have seen, I guess, a little more resolutions and I guess movies that focus more on on like you can see so many like older movies where the entire movie is just it's more like a play. It's just two people or a few people talking to each other, and you see the drama unfold like that instead of through action scenes or and you don't even need. But I don't know if we as an audience are kind of prepared for that, or if and so. But anyway, I will take it for what it is. And of course, they have her in this Red Riding Hood look. So again, it changes how she looks. I wish kind of that it didn't look like Red Riding Hood because the red cape looks a little too much like Red Riding Hood. But yeah, but those are some of my ideas. I think. To say more on this, I think Snow White is a powerful character. Walt Disney really liked. Obviously there was something that Walt, being the first film that Snow White or that Walt Disney made, it kind of it's a story that was significant and full of meaning, I think, for Walt Disney himself. And so now, of course, I'm not judging the original film, so that would be a separate thing. But I do acknowledge just how so many of the elements of the story of Snow White resonates with everybody. It's not just a girl story. It's something that a man can relate to because we suffer in the same way. But this story tells the suffering from a woman, from the point of view of a woman, or the struggles from a woman. And so that that's what makes it interesting. And I wish this film would take that into account because I think Walt Disney purposely, and I would say this of other films as well, purposely tells Cinderella as another story. It's for everybody, but it's a woman that lives her life and conducts business and makes things happen in a different way than a man would. So anyway, this scene right here. These are the mine trains. Now, this is not something from the original movie. And what's weird to me is, look how exciting this looks, right? Look how great it looks. And it's weird to me how they put so much effort. Like, why can't the mine train at Magic Kingdom look like this? Why can't it have this level of detail? I love how these movies have so much detail, and yet, the actual mine train ride is not like this at all. It doesn't feel like this. It doesn't have, look at those. It has, volcanic, fumes and sort of pillars of fire throughout. And look, it even shows, now that's kind of reminiscent of the mine train attraction, which you have not seen at Walt Disney World, at Magic Kingdom. They have a mine train ride, and I haven't been on it in a while, but it's just, it doesn't live up to all of the exciting things, and this looks kind of like Lord of the Rings. Now, I will say, it's not exactly the most inspired, the most original look, because, the mine trains are they become pretty, they're often used, right? We've seen this in Harry Potter, we've seen this in different, we've had multiple opportunities, Indiana Jones, right, to see, mine train sequences, so that it's not entirely original, but I just wish that this level of detail would have been used at the theme parks, at Magic Kingdom. But, so let me look at, this is Snow White. I can't remember obviously, I don't know exactly what's happening here, but this is where the song Waiting on a Wish comes up. I believe that is what it's called. And this is a new song, so it's not in the original film, and it sounds very much like Moana. So if you have seen Moana, it sounds a lot like the song, which is pretty good. It's kind of this, inspirational, motivational song, and I think it works. And even though it doesn't have kind of the song itself doesn't have the kind of the nuance that you would expect from a, Hammerstein. It doesn't have the intricate or interesting, melodies, or it doesn't play with your intellect in the same way as a traditional musical would. And it also doesn't sound like a Broadway either, like what I would call modern Broadway. It sounds like a pop song is what it sounds like. But it works. They've been able to make it work, and I think that's why they've included it. And it's a pretty safe way to create a song. And so Waiting on a Wish, it's a new song. You can hear, I guess, a clip of it. I'd love, it'll be interesting to hear it in the film, or, once the song is released in its entirety. But, yeah, I thought it was interesting, again, to notice how these songs they're chosen. It's kind of a safe choice, but it's also reflective of just what has become common to use nowadays. And I'm okay with it, I guess. It's, it's worth noting. I do like it, although I feel like it, it's one colored, it's just this inspirational, motivational, it doesn't really tell a story. It doesn't really, I don't know, I wouldn't call it the most complex music writing. It's not complex, but it still has a pretty good melody, which is what you want. It still makes you feel, it gives you the right feeling. And so for that reason, I have to give it, it's a plus. It's a great song. It does what it's supposed to do, which is makes you feel, if you allow it to take you, it can take you out. So it has that going for it. And so, so in that regard, I'll give it sort of, it's a good song. It does what it's supposed to do. But of course, I wish that it had been a little more, I don't know, I would have preferred perhaps a little more nuance to it, a little more complexity, closer to a Rodgers and Hammerstein, where the music, it's just different, it's more classical, more, or even, the music that Walt Disney would use. But I guess it's just, songs are different, and every generation has a different sound to it. And so, maybe that's why, and the original soundtrack for, the original Snow White is amazing. Now it's interesting to me how, the songs were so short. And I wonder why, because certainly there wasn't a time, I don't think there was an issue with them animating it. So, but a lot of the songs are very short. I'm curious why Walt Disney would choose that. And it makes them more poignant, but I guess maybe at the time that could be a relic of, of how, silent films were made, maybe. Because at the time, it was released in the 1930s. Perhaps, it was different in terms of how music was shown in movies, but that might not be it. I'm not sure. But I wish the songs were longer from the original Snow White film, because I do love it. The Someday My Prince Will Come, and then the song that the prince comes. Again, they're songs that I think Walt Disney. Now, obviously, this is not this movie, but those movies, it showed intense. I guess what would you call it? Limerence. Intense falling in love, so to speak, being a big theme of the original film. And I'm curious to see if this film is okay. So Waiting on a Wish doesn't quite sound like a falling in love theme, the way that Someday My Prince Will Come does. And so I'm curious to see how this Snow White will navigate that, or if does she even fall in love? I mean, I guess we'll find out. And this is, I'm assuming this is Dopey because of the ears, and he's kind of like putting his shovel into, or his axe, or no, a pickaxe into these shining, I don't know what you would call them. I mean, the word escapes me, but turned into these glowing things on the rock. Kind of like crystals, kind of like, I'm assuming this is perhaps something that allows them to escape, or maybe a magic power they have. I don't know. I'm not sure what's happening there. We'll find out, I guess. And then here is Snow White singing her song. I don't know if she's singing if this is her singing the song, but it shows her sort of, I don't remember if she is singing along to the song, but either way, again, a moment of ecstasy. So we see some I mean, she's showing emotions. So now here we have the Queen. And once again, this is going to be kind of like a Lord of the Rings type action sequence with, it's a little too clean. I mean, look at how this castle looks. It should be it's just too perfect. Are you kidding me? Even like, I mean, gosh, I wish, the theme parks looked this clean, and in the last few years, they've been pretty dingy, I don't know, like, but it looks so perfect, I guess, because, the CGI makes it perfect. And I feel like, it just looks brand new. And it's weird how human structures are very high maintenance. Like, I don't know how people in the past would have kept them clean, without the use of power washers and constant repainting like we do today nowadays. It's weird. I think a lot of people may not realize just how much effort is placed in making buildings last, because mold and plants and dust, like, they quickly can turn a new building, look old. And so I don't know why I'm paying attention to this, detail, but I guess, I don't know, I guess it makes it so that it's very expensive to maintain a castle. And it's kind of, it's a little weird, I guess, if with the Evil Queen, if they would necessarily spend that much money on it. And I know that in the original movie, I'm pretty sure she lived in a dingy castle, kind of. It looked, I don't know, I may be wrong about that. At least from the inside, it was kind of this creepy place, or this kind of dirty place. And here is, okay, Snow White looks kind of like Red Riding Hood, I guess, but we'll see what angle they take with this. But it looks from the trailer that it's kind of going for the fairest of them all, as in she's trying to bring, she's trying to correct the kingdom in terms of governance and how it's managed. And I don't know if that's certainly not in the original movie, or in the original story even, I don't think. So yeah, the next, again, these are all interesting ways in which we see, for example, the competitiveness between these two women, right? And that does sort of create the drama, I guess. And it shows how the strong emotions, but that is one thing that is different, right? And when it comes to, and I wish that it would show, and I don't know how this is going to play out in a movie, but if you're going to show someone who's very emotional, you want to show the downsides of it too, right? So, when we have emotions, everyone can have emotions, right? We can all choose how much emotion we want to put into something. A lot of people may not realize, but it doesn't matter who you are. You can choose to be very emotional and live in cloud nine. You could be a man or woman doing this, or you could choose to be kind of more of a realist. And so in this shot, it kind of conjures up an image of, pure emotion, right? But when you do that, there's a risk, because when you go on emotion, you're not always thinking things through logically. And so sometimes you're going to make mistakes. And so I don't know if this film does that, or if it just takes a standard, but you want to show that, I think it would be good. Even in the original film, we see Walt Disney, he shows her embarrassing moments, that she shows her being coy sometimes, she's shy sometimes, she's, but even when she does have leadership, she does lead the dwarves, and the dwarves follow her. But at the same time, you see her, she's still kind of discovering her way too in the original film. And so here, we'll have to see the movie to see how it plays out, or how you would compare this to the original film. But being able to win the heart of, or the goodwill and heart of those around you, is something that, again, I think this is more symbolic of how the complexity of, and this is something that I see in Snow White, which is the ability to control the future, I guess, through your actions today, but not just actions, but your imaginations, your ideas for what the future can be. And in this case, the future for herself is, like, I really do believe that the reason why people trust, like, why do they put their trust on Snow White? And I think the reason why is because if someone has a good heart, okay, which Snow White is portrayed to have, right? And if someone has, there's a level of trust that people have, because you need a combination of a good heart, but also the responsibility of, someone who can fulfill the role and understand safety and also when to protect themselves, and so, and that's what Snow White shows, right? When she cleans, she's showing that she's maintaining the house. She understands what's important and what's not important, and also has the good heart to care for them. So now they don't have to worry about, they can kind of trust her and trust that Snow White will do the right thing for them. And so all of that combined, and Snow White is able to do that because she has the intellect. So in order to be sort of a good person, you need the intellect. In order to be talented, you need the intellect. And that's, and sometimes, I guess what I'm saying is that it's not, life is kind of complicated, and in the case of, it seems in this trailer, and also in let's say Cinderella, or in the original Beauty and the Beast, where, right, the stepfather, gives his inheritance to the stepdaughter, the father gives the inheritance to the stepmother, right? And so you have kind of the evil stepmother thing, and the thing is, when that happens, the children, they don't understand, right? The offspring, they either understand what's happening or they don't, and the ability to understand it, and it allows them to understand how unfair life is sometimes, because there's really nothing Snow White can do. And so sometimes a lot of the things that are happening to her, right, with including between the magic mirror and the evil queen, right, she can't control that, but she can evade what's happening using her intellect and can plan accordingly. And in this case, well, obviously she had to seek refuge. Okay, so this is kind of the poster, and as you can see, I mean, this kind of looks like Darth Vader. Like there's the original Star Wars poster, I guess, had something similar to this. So the Darth Vader helmet was like this. Yeah, so this is an interesting use of imagery, and it's a little hard. Right now I'm trying to think of like how the different elements that make the film, right? Because on the one hand you have the psychological component where what is going on between the two of them, and then they're both different varying levels of intellects, and then also their understanding, because your understanding affects whether it matters to you or not, believe it or not. And so because Snow White understands what's happening, I believe that she is able to create that she's able to resolve. She's able to. It's the only way that she can effectively find a solution to the problem, because a lot of times, if you don't understand why something happens, there's nothing really you can do. And not only that, I would argue that you wouldn't even know that something bad is happening to you. I mean, well, you might know, but you don't know how to solve it. You don't have a creative solution. And a lot of times, I'm trying to explain how this could happen, but essentially, let me see, where are we? Okay, here we are. Essentially, when you, when you're trying to come up with ideas for how to solve your problems, they are not. It's most people just think about something, and just kind of run with the first few ideas, or just kind of go in a direction. But somebody who's able to think something through 100 times, let's say, or somebody who is principled and understands, and in this case, Snow White, her kindness, right, her ability to, the values that guide her in this case, these, not that the values have, that by itself, that it has power, because, a lot of people would say, well, that altruism always is a failure to people, but, for some people, right, and this is a matter of opinion, right, and I guess from the basic understanding, right, most of the time altruism is kindness, basically, and the ability to, if you do something kind or nice to someone, and then they do something nice to you, and then it's a mutually beneficial exchange. And so, but the apple is present. The evil queen, she looks a little. See, I just don't know. Yeah, I guess we'll see how it plays out, because I don't know if it'll be the same as in the original movie. And then there is Dopey, a classic, a reimagining of this. There was a similar scene in the original movie, and okay, so there it is. Okay, there's Grumpy, and this is the kind of final shot, and I wanted to just speak on how Snow White, that's the end, I guess, how Snow White is, to me, a film that is not, it represents sort of the theme, the woman's journey, so to speak, and it's not an absolute, story formula or anything, but the original film, or the original story, I guess, from the Grimm's brother, it's actually more macabre and, but back then that's kind of how the stories were, and they were a little more scary, I guess, if you want to put it that way. And so, like, of course, the new film, I'm glad to see that. I think sometimes they don't quite realize that in life, and I would say this about modern life as well, it's not just all about having weapons drawn and sort of like I said, the Lord of the Rings action sequences. It's not just about that. A lot of it is psychological. How your mind, how you control your mind, and your actions and your ability to affect others. And I think some people might say, well, what if somebody is faking it? What if somebody is using other people? And the thing is, it's always a struggle, I guess, because at the end of the day, it's hard to tell if someone is actually being sincere or is faking it, because it could be either way, right? If you see someone do something kind towards you, it could be a feigned kindness, or it could be a genuine kindness. It could be an intellectual or a intentional kindness, or it could be an unintentional kindness in which most people, or niceties, in which most people might consider that to be not as valuable, right? If something or somebody is nice to you or kind to you, but you don't, but it's not really on purpose, it might not, it's just kind of random. And I think what I love about Snow White, and I think this is kind of what I wanted to emphasize, is how Snow White has always been a story about intentionality, and about, just like Cinderella, about, someone who, Snow White believes in this, and the dwarves and the animals who are, are the symbolism behind that, they, there's a trust in her because, like I said, she's able to do what none of them can do, but also they can kind of trust that she'll be able to do what's best for them, and be able to manage the house, the same way that she was able to care for them when she was cleaning the house, right? Now, of course, does that mean that cleaning the house is literally what you're supposed to do? No. Like, you could be a slob in real life, and, like, it's not about cleaning the house. It's symbolic, right? It's about creating a space that, she's a homemaker, essentially, is what Snow White is doing. Okay, she's creating a place that's safe. It's not about, it's funny, I've been to houses where it was like an amazing mother of multiple children, and if you could imagine this, like an amazing mother, all of the kids, well cared for, a mother trying her best, and her house is like complete squalor. Okay, and so, very dirty, everything's just a mess. Some people are just messy, and the thing is, I don't want you guys to think that the literalism of cleaning is what Snow White is providing, because in actuality, what matters is what, it's, again, these are all symbolisms to me, and what matters in life is, what's important in life, and what I mean by that is, like, what matters is doing, or I should say, understanding what is important. When a person, and this is where, and I believe that Snow White sort of has that understanding, which is why, I guess that's the symbolism behind the movie. Right, because you might say, because they're not, I guess in real life you could throw the support to anybody, but I think in the movie, that there's, again, or in the story, there is a form of intention and on the part of the creator or the writer of the story to show that Snow White, the consequences of what happens to Snow White, or why these things happen to Snow White. And a lot of it is because I believe Snow White is guided by her ability to act in kindness, right, and to the way that she was with the dwarves, right, and showing them how to live, how to, but a lot of it is just through action, and how you don't even have to say anything. A lot of times people will pick up the cues on who you are, and they'll go by that. And you can change the world just in that way alone. And who you are is something that, when you are young, you kind of just do random things. But as you get older, you are guided more. Your principles deep inside will reflect on the outside. And sometimes it's not elegant. That's the thing. A lot of people, they have this idea that it has to do with how well someone speaks or how well someone sounds. And it's not always that. A lot of it is, it can be messy. I mean, just like the analogy I gave, like, you could have a messy house, because it's not about having a clean house. You could have a messy house but still have a beautiful home that's welcoming to an offspring. And in this case, of course, this is kind of Snow White, with the dwarves. She is showcasing the power of motherhood, which is a gift that women have, that the dwarves do not have, and they cannot do. Okay, the dwarves don't care. Like, men don't have offspring. They don't have the same powers that a woman would have. And so in that sense, they have to, they can feel the difference, so to speak, right? And so the dwarves are able to sort of benefit from that, and it shows how, in the movie it shows it as, her cleaning their house and caring for them, and bringing sort of happiness to them, if you want to put it that way, right? Funness. It also is, it can be a lot more than that. And in life, what matters, what truly matters, is beyond that, is sort of the greater purpose. And I believe that Snow White is able to see that, because even till the end, right, she still, she understands what happens to her. And it's also that she's not just being kind just because it is, just out of randomness, so to speak. So I do believe that it is part of the her ethos, I guess. But as far as I did want to address, what the whole Snow White story is about with the apple, because eventually the queen is intelligent too, and so she is able to use her, and let's not have any qualms about it. The queen, it represents, is not a good person, and so the queen will cause damage to Snow White, and so, real damage. And so, the apple is kind of, it's the queen understanding, so to speak, trying to use her kindness against her, right? Because if she shows up as a queen, as an evil queen, then she won't be able to get access to her in the same way. And so by disguising herself as an older, as sort of something frail, it allows for, the dwarves can let their guard down. And I think the symbolism behind that is that people are, I guess, I don't know, like, I guess from an interpersonal level, people are going to use your powers against you, so to speak, right? And so in this case, she's not able to. The evil queen cannot enter the forest, right? It's an enchanted forest, and so sometimes, in life, that there's a symbolism behind that. It's not just literal, but it's the symbolism being that if you create an environment where only certain standards happen, anything outside of that is not going to be able to penetrate the same way because it stands out too much, right? And so the evil queen would stand out too much in the enchanted forest, so the disguise kind of becomes a part of it. Now that's one way you can interpret it. I would love to rediscover this idea and see, or I should say, come back to this idea and see if there's anything else I could come up with. But that's one way of looking at it. And the other way is that the evil queen kind of uses this her kindness against her, so to speak, right? Because she's essentially saying, try this apple, and perhaps you could argue that Snow White fails in being too open. So it's pretty naive. I mean, I guess most of us, I guess, would have the common sense to not be so trusting, and so that I don't know what to make of that, because that is kind of a big flaw to have. But it also shows that maybe that is Snow White's flaw, or perhaps it could be a kind of a guide against the sort of a guide against being too trusting. Maybe a lesson against being too trusting. That's one way you can interpret that. The importance of understanding that in life. I think the lesson here is not that there are good and people that are sort of bad. It's not just that simple, but that sometimes the altruism can come from a good source, and sometimes the altruism can come from a bad source. Just like in this case, right? Right. She's giving her the apple, like that's a form of altruism, and so the idea is that there's a randomness to it, and you don't know if somebody is being nice or kind to you. You don't know if it's good or bad. But that doesn't mean that being nice or kind is bad, or always good, or always bad, as I just said. And I think a lot of people, they kind of, for some reason in our modern society, we seem to, oh no, somebody was nice to me and it didn't turn out good, so therefore all nice people are bad. And it's like, it kind of becomes something ridiculous where people will take one side or the other and just kind of run with it. And I think with this story, we see that there's two sides of kindness. And it doesn't mean that niceness or kindness is, which I see interchangeable. Even though people try to make it different, I don't, intrinsically, I don't think they are. There is a difference. And outside of, what people have said or what people might say in modern times, I think what's relevant is that it sometimes you don't know what is happening in life. There's kind of a level of there's an element of chaos and surprise, and you don't know who you're dealing with, and so there really isn't much. I don't know. There's not much you can do about it because you're going to be encountering both, right? People who, and then of course that's not to mention the misunderstandings. Maybe somebody is framed, maybe somebody is tricked into doing something. There's just so many possibilities, and your intellect is the only thing that will help you, hopefully, in understanding, and perhaps understanding that the world is full of people of all kinds of proclivities, and that doesn't mean that you don't need to believe in the power of kindness or love, because just because some people misuse it, or you might have misunderstood how someone else used it. So that's just one way to look at sort of the basic theme of this story, fairy tale. I do enjoy I did like that they introduced sort of new music to this trailer, to this movie, and I wonder what direction they'll take it in as far as the story itself. But hopefully you've seen a little bit about how I see Snow White, and how the idea of how I really see, and not just the emotions. I guess we talked about emotions in terms of sometimes you can have strong emotions that guide you through life, right? That where was it? Hold on, I gotta look back at these pictures because now here it is. Okay, these the emotions and the way that emotions can power you, but it can also be a weakness. And the same thing can be said about kindness, right? Kindness can be powerful, but it can also be a weakness, right? It's a weakness because the queen can use it against you. And so emotions, I wish and I hope that this story shows, because in the original film, they showed her in her weakness as well. They showed her kind of sometimes being silly. Sometimes she was coy, she was shy. Like intense emotionality can be a weakness, and perhaps you could argue may have contributed to. But I don't know if I see the story that way. I think the story is more like it's a grand story, because it's like a story of her whole life, and most of us just don't have that scope. It's a story. That's one thing about Snow White, that it's about it's about coming of age. It's about one woman versus another woman, right? It's about an older woman versus a younger, right, woman. It's about kind of a more broad outlook on, and so that changes how, I don't know, it makes it so that the themes are bigger, and at the same time, I think, like I said, what you learn is that life is full of complexities, and it's not just as simple as life is not simple. I mean, in some ways it is simple, but in a lot of ways there's you don't know if something, you don't know what you're looking at a lot of times, right? You don't know if it's worth trusting or not. You don't know if and that doesn't mean that goodness is not good, or that you just don't know a lot of times the motivations of other people. So but nevertheless, I think the reason why Snow White is able to succeed is because she uses her intellect, and the reason why the dwarves trust her, and so the intellect has the power. And this is why, like, I think it's so important to be sort of, even if you're not a leader, we are all leaders of our own lives, and people look up to us, and there are certain situations where you will have the power to be in, even if you're not in charge, you will have the power of influence, and that's something you have. You can choose how you want to approach that, and understanding how kindness and niceness works, and how it can be used for good or for bad, and understanding emotions and how it can be good, and also how it can mislead you in the wrong way. Right? You might be emotional. It's good to feel emotions, right? It's good to feel love. It's good to feel all of these things. But then it can also hurt you too, right? Because if you fall in love with the wrong thing, that could cause there are, in every choice, there's sort of a good way of doing it and another way of doing it, and it's always going to be different, according to how, of the circumstances, I believe. So I love kind of the way that that the story kind of juxtaposes all of these ideas. Okay, so let's go over, let's just go over this a little bit. So overall, the movie, I don't know, conjures up a lot of ideas in me. I did talk about the idea of the machine, a machine of ideas, which is a unique concept that I don't think I was able to, go into details about. But essentially what that means is that sometimes the mind, to me, a machine is basically a collection of individual parts that work together and to form something. And when you memorize it, or in a physical object, a machine is able to operate when there's like thousands of moving components that all together work towards a specific goal. Okay, so in this case, when I talk about I don't want to use the word ideological, an idea machine, a machine made of ideas. What I mean is that you can do this same thing. If I think about something and then I think about it again and again and again, and I think about it hundreds, thousands of times, and each idea is molded towards a specific sort of task. And then I put them all together, it becomes a machine. And it's not a literal machine, but it's a machine in your mind, and your mind memorizes it and is able to implement it. And it's purposeful, and it's tailor-made for that situation. And so when that happens, a leader who's able to create machines within their idea machines within their mind is able to do great things. And that's what I'm trying to say is what happens. This is something that humans are capable of doing, because you can understand things. So intelligence, understanding, and the ability to create a machine in your head, so to speak, all of that combined is what makes a hero a hero. And that's what I think is evidenced with Snow White, or anyone who is a leader. At the end of the day, almost all leaders, I would say, have some level of, they have something about them, hopefully, not always, I guess, but usually, they tend to have something about them that allows for them to lead, and for people to be able to trust them to some extent. And hopefully a good leader at least has that. Now, so anyway, I guess just to wrap this up, overall, I don't really mind. I think a lot of people are making a big hullabaloo about this. Like, yeah, I mean, it might be different. Like I said, it seems to me like they're going for like Lord of the Rings, or they're going for action. The standard fare, what we would have come to expect from these live action films. And personally, I kind of wish they would have gone a different direction. But I guess, I would have liked something based on, more of an emotional drama, or focusing more on the characters. I don't know, but we'll see. I guess I'll hold my judgment on that. And if this video does well, I'll go visit. I'll watch the movie, I guess. But I don't know. We'll see if you guys will like this, and if it's popular, I'll do that. So anyway, I don't see the issue. I mean, I like to take movies. I don't really care. I mean, obviously the acting is not really the problem. I think just in general, my criticisms of Hollywood is not. It's more the ideas and not so much the characters. I mean, the acting is fine. That's not. For some reason, when it comes to acting, they put a lot of effort into that. They're not lazy. They don't hire lazy actors. The actors are good, but it's just the ideas that Hollywood needs to work on. So, but yeah. Anyway, what do you all think?